All right. Hello, folks. Welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Kat. I'm a licensed registered dietitian nutritionist. And on this channel, we like to talk about weight inclusive, weight neutral focused approaches to health, as well as diving into scammy and, in my opinion, unethical nutrition related businesses, products, mostly nutrition related MLMs, and other fear mongering nutrition related claims. So that is one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about today's topic with Christy. So before we get into that, really, Christy, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Christy Wilson. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist as well. The bulk of my career has been in community health as a nutrition counselor. I've been a dietitian since the late 90s, the late 1900s, as I've heard it referred to as. I'm a nutrition counselor. That's like my day job. And then I have my own nutrition communications business that I launched by myself, and I still just work by myself since 2011, which is Christy Wilson Nutrition. In that part of my job, I work with food brands and food commodity boards, doing recipe development, nutrition, communications, and in the form of like recipe creation, content creation, food photography, and that whole sort of bundle.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on to kind of give your thoughts and opinions. So I've hardly ever worked with like sponsorship kind of things. Like most recently I was sent a whole bunch of greens products and I did like a very short video, 10 minutes, and it was just trying different products. I wasn't even paid for that. That was offered, but I was like, no, I'll take the products and then I'll give my opinions on the products and the ingredients and stuff. And so today, though, we are talking about this Washington Post article, and it was titled "The Food Industry Pays Influencer Dietitians to Shape Your Eating Habits." And earlier this year or this summer, the Washington Post put out some, I would say, like fear-mongering, clickbaity titles related to the World Health Organization and their more recent publications, information about aspartame, but it completely took everything out of context. When you actually looked at what the World Health Organization has on their website and what they actually said about aspartame. So the Washington Post is not in my, like, I don't trust them right now to understand the nuances and to really like look at what the sources are, and to, apply critical thinking to those. But I will say that I do have a bias a little bit kind of going into this. I do know Cara Harpstreet. I haven't seen her in a couple of years, but we were both in leadership for a Kansas Dietetic Association or the nutrition. Yeah. I haven't seen her for a while, though. I haven't heard from her, or like we haven't spoken for a while. But out of this article, I do know her. But yeah, so I wanted to talk to you. You made a reel about this article. I will get into the article and read it. But like, what was your initial thoughts before we really dive into it?
Yeah, so having done the work that I have with different food brands for several years now, and I have had contracts with food brands and food commodities. And so for people who aren't familiar with what a commodity board is, it's mainly working, through typically a PR company who the board has hired to promote the consumption of a particular food. It's not a brand, but it's working with a particular food. So for instance, California strawberries is one that I've worked with on and off throughout the years. Tomato Wellness, which promotes the consumption of canned and processed tomato products. And you're hired by these boards, again, that aren't promoting a particular brand, but a specific food. And, having that background, knowing almost all the dietitians who were featured in this Washington Post piece, it was pretty offensive because it really, with one broad stroke, I always mess up those like sayings, but it just sort of painted all dietitians as these sort of sellouts who are just paid to promote these products, when in fact, these brands and, even commodity boards, but we'll just say brand companies, it's just kind of as a generic term, hire dietitians just as they would hire any expert for their opinions. And there was one dietitian, she's in sports nutrition. Her response, I really, I wholeheartedly agreed with, because what she said was, when you are trying a new product or you have questions about a product, you look up experts for their opinions. And that's what these dietitians did. I think for some people, they're viewing this as more of a piece about the importance of disclosure, which, yes, it is a big part of this article. But I think that sort of got washed away. And the bigger point that I think more people, not necessarily dietitians, although some did, but like on a public scale, on a national scale, it really more so made the point of that dietitians are just paid to, they're just the mouthpiece for these.
Not to be trusted, kind
not
of.
to be trusted. They're just getting paid off. And so I think that ended up being really the main point of this article, which makes us all look bad, as an entire profession. So I was really offended on several levels from this article.
It took me a little while to read it. I saw it here and there that people were sharing it, but I kind of skimmed it. I just read like the very top of it, and it seemed like what you were saying, a big portion of it is the disclosure piece, which on my channel I do talk a lot about the importance of disclosure. And some of the examples, and we'll get into the examples that maybe they didn't disclose it like appropriately enough. Totally understandable, but that was not the takeaway. Like,
no, I don't think that was the general takeaway, because, I even saw, and it made me also pretty upset to see colleagues like throwing their colleagues under the bus. It's like, and they themselves promote products. And even it's not even like something that has been proven to be safe, which is aspartame in this case, but, they're selling supplements.
I mean, they even talked about omega-3s and being brain boosting, and like, it was a bad thing to say that they're supportive of brain health kind of thing. Shelby says approximately 80% of dietitians are female. It always seems like female-dominated fields get attacked. Yes, like teachers and nurses, beauty influencers went through this at the beginning of YouTube too. I miss that, but and there's so much like even on top of that, like so much lack of diversity.
You add that on top of everything else. So I just feel like this was very targeted. I feel that they really missed the point of all the nuances that come with certain recommendations for folks, like those of us who do tell our patients and our clients and our customers that, if you want a diet soda now and then, it is safe, because the amount that is studied is so much more than what most people, would consume, that would cross that threshold of what is safe to consume.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, where was it? So, earlier this summer, when the whole aspartame thing was coming out, I did not get paid by them or anything. This is not sponsored or anything, but I actually went to the World Health Organization's report. I downloaded it, like I read through it, and I shared a little bit on my story about what they were saying basically in where it was, because it was, the classification was a group 2B.
Right. And I looked that up too. I was refreshing my memory. I'm like, well, what's in there? And things like, pickled vegetables are in that category. Aloe vera is in that category.
Right.
The other thing is, which is class 2B, which is possible carcinogenic. So there's 4 groups. And so within the 2 group, there's an A and there's a B. An A is considered probably carcinogenic. B is possibly. So it's in that lower tier. And cell phones fall into that category.
Of the
Also,
higher tier?
well, in the
Or
same tier as
oh, I see.
aspartame.
Oh, okay,
Um,
gotcha.
and then the other thing is progesterone-only contraceptives, radio frequency magnetic fields emitted by common electronic devices like cell phones. So like all these people sort of bashing dietitians who are
On their
saying
cell phone.
on their cell phones,
Yeah.
saying that aspartame is safe. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
then give up your, if it's that bad and you feel
Yeah.
that strongly about it,
Mhm.
then yeah, give up your cell phone.
Right.
Like it's so ridiculous.
In the group above that one, so like you said, it was that lower tier one. The higher tier one, though, includes the high temperature frying, the consumption of red meat, night shift work. Like,
Right.
but we can see
It's
the
so it's like
nuances
this
with those.
smattering of like random things. Jobs are included in that because
Yeah.
in the same
Uh-huh.
class as aspartame is carpentry, dry
Mm,
cleaning and textile manufacturing industries. That's in the
mhm.
same category as aspartame, which doesn't mean there isn't
Right.
any studies that do show that it could be carcinogenic, but they're not very strong. It's not very strong evidence to put it in that higher tier either.
Yeah. So in my I was like writing I never ended up making the video, but in their like using their words, it said that there is inadequate, not convincing evidence for cancer in humans or inadequate evidence for cancer in experimental animals.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and I never saw a health professional saying that, aspartame containing foods are like nutrient or like healthy foods. Like they're not promoting that. They're saying basically let's not forget about the other social determinants of health and all the other aspects. And like, if somebody feels comfortable including that in their intake, if that brings them a little bit of joy and it helps them to like do other things that support their health, then like,
Mhm.
sure, I'm not going to say to start consuming that, but
Right.
like, if you are
And
consuming it,
and the
keep
other
them safe from it.
thing that, we as dietitians would never say is, you know, have unlimited amounts either.
Right.
Neither,
Right.
or, nor are any dietitians saying eat a diet full of sugar, because they also sort of blasted dietitians who are really, in the end, I mean, what we know is they are promoting folks and kids and
Mhm.
parents of kids to promote a healthy relationship with food. It's
Mhm.
okay to have candy. We're not saying, stuff yourself with it all the
Right.
time or constantly give your kids this. No, we're saying it's okay to have a lollipop, after dinner, or to
Mhm.
go ahead and let kids have candy on Halloween.
Mhm.
We're not promoting this like unhealthy diet or unhealthy habits. Quite the opposite.
Right, yeah, because, I mean, the opposite that you said, if people absolutely stray away from that, I mean, we see the effects of that and how that can
Of
push someone
restriction,
into,
right?
like,
Diet
that binge
culture.
kind of yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that really, kind of surfaced, was, that yeah, it's just having that healthy relationship with food, the nuances of what we do when we're talking to clients, it's
Mhm,
complicated. And I think this old school practice of diets and meal plans and this, really, old school practice, which, yeah, I think initially dietitians were doing this. And I even had preceptors who were like, telling patients this one on one is these like generic meal plans. And it's
mhm,
like, we're not doing that anymore. It doesn't work. And for the public to think, and a lot of them still do think that when they come to talk to a dietitian, that's what they're going to get. And
mhm.
the face and the practice of dietetics is so much different. And I think people really have a hard time accepting that. It's like, oh, how dare you tell a kid to go ahead and have,
a lollipop.
candy.
Like,
Right. And how dare a dietitian promote something like MSG, which we know is safe over and over again. We
I have
know
a video. I might try to link it to this one, going through MSG and kind of debunking those issues with it.
And those are the things that people are just like so offended by and think that we're just like, we don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
When in fact, we go to school for years and have continuing education because, we're constantly, the science evolves and we've got to go with it. And this old school, like restrictive eating, no sugar, no this, no that is just ridiculous. And it's not helpful.
It's not evidence-based. I mean, when we're looking at practice, we have to also look at the practice or like the evidence base of like behavior change and long-term health related things. It's just not evidence-based to put that kind of restriction on people. So
and the author, one of the authors, the lead author of this article, I did a little digging. I'm like, who is this person? Because I know that they have done articles in the past. So Anad, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but Anad O'Connor, who is the lead journalist in this piece, Blasting Dietitians. So his background is he studied neuroscience and has a degree in psychology from Yale. Yet he has published books, including The 10 Things You Need to Eat, Lose It, The Personalized Weight Loss Revolution, Never Shower in a Thunderstorm, Surprising Facts and Misleading Myths About Our Health and the World We Live In. So somebody with zero background in nutritional science, zero background in any related field to nutrition, is writing books about weight loss and what people should be eating.
I mean, that's probably why I wanted to do this art. I don't know. And now I just want to buy those books and like do a review of them on this channel.
Yeah. So he wrote a weekly science column about the food industry's, quote, hidden influence on scientific research. And so that's kind of, I think, how he started. And that was when he worked at the New York Times. And he and his team at the New York Times, they got an award for a series called Fat Planet, examining food industry's role on global obesity. So I briefly looked that up. And so, it was him and a team of journalists at the New York Times. And so like they were awarded for this. And again, it was like ties to industry, like certain countries are ties to industry, like sugar industry, brands, et cetera, and how that sort of has influenced rates of obesity. So, again, it's sort of all that background of his, and then in this Washington Post piece, that was done in collaboration with a new organization called the Examination, which describes itself as a new nonprofit newsroom specializing in global public health reporting. And attached to the Washington Post article about dietitians is this sort of link from the Examination that has a survey attached, asking readers to help us report on nutrition influencers on social media. So this isn't the end of it. They don't put that out for no reason. They're doing research. And
I'm definitely going to do more videos on this.
And we know what's coming up next week in Denver.
What
is the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo? So I have a very strong suspicion that there will be people from the paper there to do research, and it's going to be like, the expo floor is just
Yeah,
a
that's a
combination
whole nother
of,
thing. So
yeah,
I
that's a whole
actually
other
have
thing.
a video about the Academy coming out next year. Um, it'll just kind of going through some of the history, some of the so are you a are you a member of the
I'm a
Academy?
member.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was a member. This is the first year that I wasn't, for a variety of reasons, not related to that specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so this isn't the end of it. Like, you don't have a survey
Mhm.
attached to this sort of piece and like not do
Mhm.
anything with it. Like, there's more to come. And
Right.
if he has a history of having these like series of articles,
Mhm.
and he's working with a team, and these other folks from the examination is, they're working together. This is not the end of it. But
Yeah.
I really feel like the Academy, although they did write this letter to the editor that was,
Uh-huh.
sent to all members of the Academy, um, was sort of like a response
Uh-huh.
to the Washington Post article. But it's not enough. Like, I
No,
just feel
it was
like
very short.
it was short, and it
Yeah.
did, they did make valid points, but I really feel they need to do more to protect us as a profession and really step up, because they're
Mhm.
not holding back any punches on a
Right.
national scale. Like the
Right.
Washington Post, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Do we wanna get into the article?
yeah.
Okay. All right, let me share the screen, and then, what I wanna do is just kind of talk through it, kind of just give our thoughts, our opinions as we go. It's somewhat long, but we
Yeah.
can do it. So, as we mentioned, so the titles is "The Food Industry Pays Influencer Dietitians to Shape Your Eating Habits." Up there, you see a variety of some of the dietitians who they're specifically talking about or calling out, whatever.
Hmm.
This is Cara. I know her from my time in Kansas, but other than that, these are dietitians who I don't know. Okay, so starting off, as the World Health Organization raised questions this summer about the risk of a popular artificial sweetener, a new hashtag began spreading on social media accounts of health professionals, and that hashtag was hashtag safety of aspartame. Now, going back, if you missed the very beginning of this live stream, I talk a little bit about what the World Health Organization actually said. That it wasn't so much for people for science literate people to go to the health organization and look at what their information was. It didn't really raise that many questions, but what raised questions was places like the Washington Post picking out some things and like fear mongering the fear around aspartame. So continuing on, Steph Grasso, a registered dietitian from Oakton, Virginia, used the hashtag and told her 2.2 million followers, which is crazy. I can't imagine having that many
Yeah, she's
people.
got a crazy amount of followers on TikTok.
Oh man, that would
That,
stress me out. I have a
yeah,
very small following, so like I can't imagine that.
I know, yeah. And
Um,
it grew fast, because I went to a
really?
conference that she also attended in January of this year, and she had 1 million.
Oh
So she's
wow.
gained another million in less than a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So she said that the WHO warnings about artificial sweeteners were clickbait based on low quality science. And like if anybody, like this is not hard to find. When I after this live is up and everything, I'll go back and link to the World Health Organization so you can read it for yourself as a viewer. That like a lot of the stuff about the aspartame this past summer, the like clickbaity fear mongering was really taken out of context. So
Yeah.
check that out for yourself. Go to the source. Another dietitian, Cara Harpstreet of Kansas City, reassured her Instagram followers not to worry about fear mongering headlines about aspartame because the evidence doesn't suggest there's a reason for concern. Again, kind of taken out of context when consumed in what would typically be consumed amounts. In a third video, Mary Ellen Piffs from a Houston area dietitian told who specializes in diabetes care, sipped from a glass of soda and told her Instagram viewers that artificial sweeteners satisfy the desire for sweetness without affecting blood sugar or insulin levels. And then what these dietitians didn't make clear was that they were paid to post the videos by American Beverage, a trade and lobbying group representing Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and other companies. So that is like if you're following the FTC guidelines, you have to say, and I know specifically, some of these had like where it just said sponsored, but it didn't say who it was sponsored by. There's a really good download, like influencer 101 guidebook from the FTC. Super easy to find. I'll also have that link down below. But that really makes it clear. Like, you have to say who, you make it really super clear. There is no question about who is sponsoring your post. So like, I feel like that could have been like, but that's just like such a small part of this.
Yeah. The other thing is, you know, having worked with brands before, you know, they hit you with a pretty thick contract. And it is, I mean, as dietitians, we're not attorneys. Like, we're not trained to like, how do you read a contract? Like, so, but the more you do it, like, the more familiar you get with the verbiage, you get familiar with the, you know, all the like details, and there's a lot of details in there. And with the, you know, with a organization like American Beverage, like, they're huge. So I don't know. I mean, sometimes it is unclear, especially if you don't have a lot of experience. Like, it's not crystal clear as to, you know, what you should put in a post, what hashtags to use. The other thing is, like, rules have changed over the years. So if you have been doing it for a long time,
that is true.
You know, you just have to make that very clear with your client. And if I was on this campaign, like, you know, they're my client. And so it's really important to ask those questions, like, what hashtags do you want me to use? Like, who should I tag on this? Even like, when do you want me to say that this is a partnership, or where that hashtag ad is, or sponsored? Like, where does it go? And that, you know, it's time consuming. And this is why you get paid for this sort of work, is because it is time consuming. Not just recording a video, it's all the text, the caption, the hashtags, the this, and the back and forth with that client, just so that you're both on the same page. It is very clear, you're following the rules. And sometimes there are brands that are very vague about it, and they are a little sneaky, and that is an issue. But it's also, it doesn't just fall on the influencer's part, it also falls on the responsibility of the sponsor themselves.
So I've done a couple of different talks at state academies conferences, and I did one earlier this year at the Texas Academy, specifically talking about kind of mostly focused on MLMs and issues with that. But at the end, I also discussed FTC kind of just disclosures and the importance of those. And I went through those, and that was satisfying one of the ethics requirements that we need to have as
dietitians.
Yeah. And so it was, and I did get a lot of questions about that, because dietitian, that's not part of the training. Like, social media work is not part of the training.
Yeah. So, and one of the defenses initially from the academy was that, oh, well, you know, not a lot of dietitians do this work. But it's like, okay, maybe not a lot of dietitians do that work, but they are dietitians, and they do deserve protection and some sort of defense from, you know, CDR, A&D, you know. So I think, again, like, they need to step it up. They do.
I was surprised though when I was doing my because a lot of people had questions on that, and like, what does that look like, even after the session ended, of like what it like ethics around sponsor posts and stuff like that, and disclosure. So yeah, it's just something that we don't know. I can seek it out and educate with that. But okay, so going on with this, I skipped this part. So in all, at least 35 posts from a dozen health professionals were part of the coordinated campaign by American Beverage. The trade group paid an undisclosed amount to 10 registered dietitians, as well as a physician and a fitness influencer, to use their social media accounts to help blunt the WHO's claims that aspartame, a mainstay of Diet Coke, and other sodas, ineffective for weight loss and possibly carcinogenic. So this right here says to me that the author of this cannot interpret what the World Health Organization is actually saying.
Yeah. And the other thing is, who is this physician and who's this trainer? Because why aren't they getting, their names sort of smeared all over the place? Like,
Right.
it's just very targeted to dietitians, which again,
The World Health
is unfair.
Organization didn't claim, like, as far as for there was another one, that weight loss one that came out before that. Basically, it was saying what the reason why a lot of these dietitians, including myself, are that kind of food neutral, weight neutral thing is that there's not that long-term evidence for effective weight loss. That's what it was saying. Like, we can't rely on that for long-term effective weight loss because we know diet cycling is a thing. That's the issue. It was just like a check as, yes, we're doing the right thing. So no, they didn't claim that it was like, yeah, that kind of takes the nuance out of what they actually said. Okay, so the campaign, which the beverage group acknowledged organizing, highlighted a little known tactic the multi-billion-dollar food and beverage industry is using to sway consumers faced with often contradictory health messages about popular products. The contradiction is by fear-mongering, essentially.
Yeah.
So the food and beverage and dietary supplement industries are paying dozens of, I feel like they're saying the same thing over and over again.
Well, that's why they're making the point that it's like, they're getting paid to say this. They're getting paid to say this. And here's the thing. It's like, when you're hired to do, to be part of a campaign like this, typically you're not given a script as to what to say. Yet celebrities, wellness influencers, people that have zero background in nutritional science or related field are given a script.
Yeah.
And they are told what to say because they don't know how to interpret the science. Whereas those of us who can interpret the science and give that side of the science get called out. So,
yeah.
like, where's the smearing of the celebrities who are, pushing whatever, sketchy products? Like, I mean, I'm going to say it, like, what about the Kardashians who sell detox teas and supplements and they have no background in anything, nutrition related. And yeah, I mean, celebrities maybe get some backlash, but it's like, as it is, it's tough enough being a dietitian anyway. And then to have something like this just go
take all the nuance out of it and the application,
all the nuance out of it. It's just really, it's very targeted, and it's unfair.
Yeah. So while I was reading it, this part also stood out to me a lot. So the analysis of thousands of posts found that companies and industry groups paid dietitians for content that encouraged viewers to eat candy and ice cream, downplayed the health risks of highly processed foods, and pushed unproven supplements, messages that run counter to decades of scientific evidence about healthy eating. So again, that right there takes a lot of the comprehension outside of what the actual message is. The message being, let's not demonize specific foods. Often what happens in that case, we see the effects of that, the diet cycling, the food guilt, the food shame, and we see people weight cycling their body up. We see them not have a healthy relationship with food. When we can take away that good and bad kind of morality piece of things, and food as neutral, we can really make choices that align with our bodies, with our energy levels, like in immediate, then also long term, as far as like what body kindness is and the application of that. And so I haven't seen like a dietitian specifically say like you should eat candy or ice cream, like include this in part of your meal. Like, that's not happening.
Right. But it paints that picture of like, that's what they're promoting, that's what they're saying, which isn't true.
Yeah. And then, so they found 68 dietitians, which is, I mean, not a lot, I guess. I don't know. That half of them had promoted food, beverages, or supplements to their combined 11 million followers within the last year. I mean, that's really vague as far as like, well, what were those beverages? Like, were they recommending like what is it, like what is that, like fiber kind of soda type thing, like Poppy or one of those other ones, like that's a beverage that I think this Washington Post article would be in support of. Like, and I've seen dietitians promoting that, or like other foods. Like it's so vague.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. While some dietitians noted in their social media posts that they are part of paid partnerships, their relationship with the food industry were in many cases not made explicit to viewers, analysis found. The Federal Trade Commission advises all social media influencers to be clear about who is paying them for promotion. So like, that's understandable.
Yeah.
We kind of had that conversation already.
Yeah, which I think, was one of the main points of the article, but it just sort of got, trumped by the other point that I think was the takeaway for most everybody, which was dietitians are a bunch of sellouts.
Yeah.
I mean, there was even a follow-up letter to the editor from somebody. I'm not going to say who it is, because if you look at the article and you click on like comments, you'll see there were only 2, and then they closed the comments. Like you can't comment on this anymore. Yeah. So it was last week, a person who describes himself as a, quote, licensed nutritionist. Like, what is that? He's a certified trainer.
Some states have it, some states don't. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a certified trainer. And he was disappointed to read the shenanigans about unethical practice of dietitians who misled people about the dangers of artificial sweeteners, That was the takeaway. That was the takeaway.
The dangers. I want to know I want to see that person go to the World Health Organization's actual statements and what they put out.
And he didn't.
No.
But that just sort of summarized for me what the real takeaway of this article was, which is really it's just sad, and it's like maddening and disappointing and all the things that these journalists clearly knew that was going to be the takeaway.
Right. By the way, like several of the things that I've read, and I'm like, I feel like I keep reading the same thing over and over again. I'm trying to come up to like a new part where, because I mean, all of this, if you're watching, you can like, it's all in I'll link it as well. You can read that too. But a lot of this is like same thing written and with different words, like trying to make a word count. Okay. Oh, a spokesperson said the campaign was warranted because the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and other health authorities have said aspartame is safe and disagreed with the World Health Organization's warnings. Again, lack of comprehension. The World Health Organization did not warn against that. That's not what the World Health Organization said. We shared at the beginning what they said, and I'll probably end up making like a follow-up video, like summarizing some of the stuff just to make it like easier for people, like with timestamps and stuff like that of like what they actually said.
Yeah.
Okay. The registered dietitians and nutritionists we relied on shared their own informed opinions when communicating the facts to their audiences and were paid upfront about being paid, said an American Beverage spokesman. And then one of the dietitians, the first one who they were mentioning, declined to comment. Harpstreet and Phipps didn't respond to phone calls, emails, letters. Have you spoken to them or?
No, but I do know that Stephanie Grasso did on Instagram. She gave her sort of like response.
Okay.
So it's like in 2 posts.
Okay.
And she just says, I was upfront about it. I did disclose. And just sort of like how she sort of vets who she works with when it comes to, sponsored posts. So
it's really interesting how, what was it, like 10 dietitians? And it's kind of painting the whole idea that, I mean, I've never been approached by the American Beverage Association to like what? Like, it's just I feel like it's painting the whole
and American Beverage is a trade company that promotes the consumption of non-alcoholic beverages. So that includes water, that includes juices, that includes sodas. So it's not only sodas. And I think with, people who are dietitians specifically who decide to work with whoever it is. Number one, like ethically, does that brand, company, et cetera, align with your own ethics? That's like check number one. The other thing is really be careful with the language that you use when you are giving your opinion or your, professional opinion, because people look to you as, a nutrition professional, because that's what you are. Right. So I think some of the language that might have been used, which they plucked out in this article, can be seen as, can be interpreted as saying, eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want, sort of thing. Or to maybe the language used gives the impression of discrediting the science that is clearly put out there. You could say things in a way that it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, minimize the sort of sensationalism of it, but still give credit to what has been done. Like what is the science showing? So I think if anything, just being careful the way that you, express yourself and the language that you're using, because it can definitely get twisted and really twisted out of context.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've learned on YouTube, even, of just being very careful with the words that I choose. Sometimes I kind of forget, but I try
because if it's somebody that, doesn't know anything about nutrition and it isn't going to be able to interpret the science, like,
which is fine. Like, that's
fine. Yeah. But, using words like clickbait and, wasn't support or whatever, I don't know. Well, whatever the terms are.
That they're saying about the World Health Organization said it. Yeah.
So if anything, we have a microscope on us.
Disagree with the World Health Organization.
There's a target on our back. So you just have to be really careful the way that you say things. And, getting paid for your opinion, getting paid for your expertise, there's nothing wrong with that. We should be getting paid for that.
And I feel like sometimes, like Shelby mentioned about how so many dietitians are women, women-dominated fields get attacked. We're in capitalism. Like, so many dietitians also have children. Their children are either, like, if they're working from home, like, they might need childcare to do with it. Like, just to demonize getting paid for work. That feels kind of a little bit icky. I don't know. To me.
And the thing is, I'm sure
as long as you're upfront, like, just be transparent.
And I'm sure you've experienced it. It's like people are always asking for our opinions on everything, from sugar substitutes to particular foods, superfoods, products, whatever. So it's like, you ask for this, here we are, and then you get a piece like this that's like, oh my gosh, how dare you?
Right. Yeah. So, like, I have to question, what was the concern of the post talking about their what is it, the transparency? Because if that was the case, then this one right here, so when Cara changed it to specifically American Beverage, like, then they should be happy with that, right? But, like, what was their real reason? It wasn't the disclosure that they were talking about so much,
and that really wasn't the main takeaway.
No. Okay. So basically that's the same part of it. So, encouraging followers to eat sugar and candy.
Like, that is just so inaccurate.
Yeah, it's, that, what is that? What is that movie where, oh man, that quote where it was like, everyone is now Billy Madison. Do you know that quote from the movie?
I know the movie, but I don't remember a quote.
It has a little harsher words than I would typically use. Okay, here it is. Okay, what you've just said is one of the most insanely
Oh,
idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you ever close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
yeah.
That's how I feel about the takeaway from
Mhm.
what the authors put together with this,
Yeah.
because it lacks the I know I've said it before, the nuance, but the comprehension of what the World Health Organization actually said about aspartame. And I don't fault the readers for going away with this with some fear and maybe lack of like wanting to see a dietitian, because if I knew nothing about like that, then I might have that same kind of fear and concern. But I put all of that response of that quote to the authors of this, because
Yeah.
it's true in how they interpreted the World Health Organization's
It was extremely
information.
slanted. It was biased, I think. And I'm just waiting like to see what's going to come out from that survey that they have attached to this article, and perhaps after Fancy, like if there are going to be a journalist there just saying, look at all these, sugary
Right. I
beverage
mean, there were
companies.
articles a couple years ago about that.
Oh yeah, that was in 2013. I even like went back to look at
16.
that. And that was a public health attorney who and you can actually still find the article that she wrote, and her name was Michelle Simon. So she wrote an article in 2013, and she
Okay.
was at Fancy.
Yeah.
1 year.
I think I was there that year. Oh, no, I wasn't. That was in Houston in 2013. No, 2012 was in Houston. No, I was in Houston. I think so.
Yeah, it was like around that
Houston,
time, 2012,
think, yeah.
2013. And then there was the group that came out from there that was Dietitians for Professional Integrity, which they disbanded. But she was kind of the, I don't know, instigator, I guess.
Yeah.
Group. Yeah, her article was, or she wrote a book, I think. It was called "Now a Word from Our Sponsors," saying the Academy had a credibility problem.
Oh, yeah. It has some other problems. But yeah, that one was also, and so the Academy, I think it only covers like 7% of their income, and I think that in their statement, their response to the editor, they like up to 4%, even 4 or 7%.
It was
of their income.
it was like
from
a little over $1 million out of their budget of like 30 some million, or
Yeah.
or revenue of 30 some whatever million. Like 1.1 million is from like brands.
Yeah.
So it is a small percent.
All right. So back to this. So encouraging followers to eat sugar and candy. Registered dietitian Lindsay Plescott of Vancouver, British Columbia, has posted videos of herself eating ice cream and peanut butter cups while telling people that denying themselves sugary food will only make their cravings worse. That is true. Typically, like, okay, check mark for that. Yes. Evidence-based wise, behavior change wise. Yeah. These posts and other posts were paid by the Canadian Sugar Institute, a trade group which is funded by sugar producers and includes foods on its Instagram page. So as long as that was there was transparency with that, okay. What's the issue? Yeah. She is. I'm pretty sure I've never heard of Lindsay Plescott, but, and I might be wrong with it. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong with this, but I don't think that she's telling people to go out and buy that to like incorporate that. Like that's not what it misses the intent of the messaging. It like manipulates it, which that I have an issue with.
Yeah.
And then in another video, she held a glazed donut and chocolate chip cookie, and she mocked advice to reduce sugar intake. She said the best ways to cut sugar are with a knife, my hands, or even my teeth. I actually have a video, one of my first videos on my channel. It's like how I cut carbs as a dietitian, and it starts out with me like literally cutting carbs. Cutting with a knife. But I mean, part of that also is how social media is like doing something like that. I think that's funny. Like that's cute. Like it's an approach that brings just awareness to the fact that you don't have to do that. There's different ways to approach that and still benefit physical
Right.
health.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There's her. There she is.
And we know the science on diets, including low carb diets. They don't work. They're not sustainable. Right. They just promote, again, an unhealthy relationship with food and restriction.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, so we look at like, well, what our whole goal is to help people like with a healthy relationship with food, a lot of times with their physical health, right? And so we need to see what works and what doesn't work. And diet cycling does not work. So yeah. I kind of want like the author to spend the time in our shoes and then try this again, because like they are approaching it in a way that's just not how the real world works.
Yeah, again, I think it just goes back to this old school mentality of what people expect dietitians to do and how they expect us to practice, and it doesn't, that old way does not work.
Yeah.
But again, until somebody sees a dietitian who does have, this food forward approach, this, inclusivity approach,
evidence-based
approach. Evidence-based approach. Like
yeah.
they're going to keep on with this mentality, and it's,
they continue to talk about Plescott, saying that initially she had concerns about working with the sugar group, but she has full control over her posts, which reflect her belief in removing guilt and shame around food. Love that. She wrote that all collaborative content has been the same messaging I have shared organically for years. And I mean, if I was in that same situation, that would be like similar, because I have shared that organically for years.
Yeah.
I think that so it sounds like here their main concern is the fact that she's getting paid by that. But going back again, it kind of, I think this word can sometimes be thrown around kind of, but like it's kind of misogynistic to think that she's just gonna work organically for years without, like, what's the problem as long as she is being upfront? There is the question of, should any health professional be paid by any kind of thing? But then if that's the case, then it wouldn't matter what the company is or what the organization is. It's just like absolute, like, where's that line basically?
Yeah.
Where it's okay or not okay. And I mean, that is also a reflection of our economic reality. So what really is the Washington Post wanting out of this?
Right. And the thing is that dietitians who are paid influencers, this may be their income. For dietitians like me, it's a nice supplement to my income, because no one becomes a dietitian to become rich. That's for sure. So, if we're paid to give our expertise in collaboration with a company that, it aligns with our ethics. It's a product you use. Or a food that you always eat anyway. There's nothing wrong with that.
Just be transparent.
Be transparent. Right. That is like number one. You have to disclose. You have to. That's just, it's the right thing to do. And professionally, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And another dietitian, Jen Messina, from North Vancouver, posted on video on Instagram where she added a lollipop to a dinner plate. She told parents the strategy will prevent sweet obsession. I'm pretty sure it's kind of missing probably some context of like if that child was wanting that lollipop in the first place. Like,
like who's like deliberately pushing sugar.
Yeah. And then you can make Halloween less stressful by allowing kids to eat as much candy as they want when they're done trick-or-treating. I mean, that's how, this is anecdotal, but that's how I was raised. Like, have your joy around that, and then you probably won't feel the best the next day. I don't know, but like it probably not. Like, and that's how I felt as a kid. Well, I was like, it was fun for that night, and then kind of was good. Like,
the whole novelty of it sort of wears off.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see if there's anything here. Again, this will be linked. Y'all can read it on the screen or when you click the link. Okay, so she was she was paid by the Canadian Sugar Institute, and her vice is non-traditional. Her goal is to help parents. So non-traditional meaning like non-diet culture, what we've been doing this whole time, like trying to what basically starts the diet cycling.
Right.
Too much added sugar can contribute to issues. Anything in overconsumption wise can contribute to issues. Too much water can be an issue. So that's why we need to talk about approaches that are actually sustainable. Okay, so if your kiddo is obsessed with treats, they likely need more access to sweets rather than less. Yeah, like evidence-based wise, sometimes like when you take away, that's when that can lead to kiddos hiding food in their room because they feel like they're not safe to consume those in the house, like in open.
Right.
So I don't see a problem with that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of the like those kind of takes, it kind of puts this assumption like that's a bad thing. Like it's not outright saying that that's an issue, but the fact that they included that makes me feel like that's meant to be like a
it is. I mean, that the whole thing is like very deliberate. Just sort of plucking things out that sound like, oh my gosh, how dare a dietitian say something like that?
Yeah. And again, to anybody who has not been trained, that might sound a little bit like weird, but that's why we are where we are. That's what comes from that years, decades, thousands, working with thousands of people. That comes with that. That's why it sounds like you don't know that because you're not a health professional.
Yeah. And I worked in community health for so long, and and getting referrals from physicians who are referring for a lot of times it's weight loss, but it's like this takes time. You have to meet people where they're at, and if recommending a beverage that has aspartame in it to replace something that is high in calories because it is sugar sweetened, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Didn't they want to have less? Weren't they just talking about it, like promoting the idea of like having
right? Yeah. So I did the math here. And so the upper safe limit is 40 milligrams per kilogram of aspartame. So for a person who's 130 pounds or 60 kilos, that would be the equivalent of 2,400 milligrams a day, which comes out to 12 cans of diet soda. Which is 144 ounces, and that's over 4 liters. Who is drinking 4 liters of diet, whatever, soda, juice? Because that aspartame gets added to other products other than soda. But 4 liters, which is still safe.
Right. And at that point, I'm more concerned about what is it displacing? Like, what are the other? Yeah.
Like, if you're not full of diet soda, it's like, what are you eating?
That's not going to sustain a body, right? But like, that's not the issue. Is not the aspartame at that point. Like,
right. So when dietitians are saying yes, having 1 or 2 diet sodas, cans a day. It's fine.
Yeah.
Because it is. That's what the science is showing.
That's coming straight from the World Health Organization.
Yes.
That the authors of this cannot comprehend.
Yeah. Or even that's like conservative. That's a conservative like limit from the research is 40 milligrams per kilogram.
Yeah. This is from the World Health Organization. Like, I don't care say how much I am in support of the World Health Organization. And like, when it comes to, like that, like, oh man. And then this says, it continues on, the analysis by the post and the examination, which you were describing earlier, kind of the offshoots of it, also found that dietitians have been paid to tout the benefits of dietary supplements that lack scientific consensus, including products like collagen supplements promoted for skin, nail, and joint health, detox teas that claim to help with the body expel toxins, and capsules marketed for mitochondrial health. Who are these? No,
I don't know
I've never
any
seen a dietitian
I've
promote.
seen some dietitians
Oh, you have?
promoting, or like they use collagen, but those
Oh,
other
yeah. Like,
things,
I mean,
I
that's
don't.
just a amino acid. Like, it's just a kind of protein. It's not a
Yeah,
fix all anything. It's not a magic
yeah.
thing. Like, it just mixes well. Like,
And like
yeah,
I do recommend omega-3 supplements
right.
when it's appropriate. It's not like I'm telling everybody like have this
Yeah.
supplement. Like, and there is scientific evidence of benefits to brain health and heart health, and having anti-inflammatory properties and
Or omega-3
lowering
fatty acids.
triglycerides. Yes,
Yeah.
like I don't have a problem with that. And as a dietitian, you are food first. Like that
Yep.
is your approach, is food
Mhm.
first. So yeah, but all that other stuff, I have no idea. I don't doubt that there are some out there who do
The
that,
detox
but
teas, like, is that like a I mean, that reminds me of like a Dr. Oz, like, kind of dietitian. Like, yes, there are some of those out there, but
and what
detox
about
teas,
celebrities? Celebrities pushing
yeah.
detox crap all the time that ends up in the dollar store because it's just like, right? Like, come on.
I
But
personally am not seeing a dietitian promote detox
no,
teas.
me either. I haven't either. So I don't know
I'm
where
not
that
saying that
information
there's
came from.
none, but they're
Mhm.
probably in alignment with Dr. Oz if they're promoting detox teas.
Or the Kardashians.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then, oh yeah, going to what you're talking about with the omega-3 fatty acids. So there is a dietitian who encouraged parents to give what she calls brain boosting omega-3 fatty acid supplements. We know that the brain needs fatty acids. Fat is so important. That's why, like, the low fat, I'm just not a fan for so many reasons,
Yeah.
diet culture wise, but also like nutrient wise. So like the fact that they had an issue with, I mean, and I'm not a pediatric dietitian, so I don't know what age to incorporate that and when that would be needed. But like brain boosting omega-3 fatty acid, like, I don't know. Why do they have an issue with that so much?
Uh,
The American Academy of Pediatric warns that such supplements are not approved by the FDA. That right there is also that what I pulled from the Billy Madison movie, because there are no supplements that are approved by the FDA.
none.
That
None.
that's like saying there's
It's not food and it's not drug. It's
right.
supplements. It falls into that category of like the abyss.
Right. Like that's like saying there's no supplements that are yeah, supplements are not approved by like the I don't know, like the computer industry. Like it's not yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's a true statement. Their context may not match what is listed on the label, and adverse effects are not always reported either. That's why you would need something that's like third party tested or something. Like
Right.
the
And that check.
response, yeah.
Mhm.
Hello, Kira. Yeah, like the response that they had to the dietitian promoting omega-3 fatty acids is not coherent. Like, okay. Okay, so lack of disclosure, bad for consumers. Again, we've kind of talked about this.
Yeah.
That if that is their issue, then can they do a little bit better with that? I think that, dietitians are not inherently, we're not taught about being influencers. Like that's a specific job that some choose to do.
Mhm.
And, there is that ownership that needs to be taken, like looking at the FTC guidelines and stuff. But if they're not aware of that and just going off what the company is telling them to do, then I can see something like the hashtag sponsored or hashtag ad being used without saying who is sponsoring it or who the
Yeah.
advertisement's
And
for.
yeah, you have to make it obvious,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid things like this happening.
Yeah, yeah. Dietitian, everybody. And I mean that's not something that dietitians are against either. I'm not the only dietitian on YouTube who talks about the importance of transparency and following FTC guidelines
Mhm.
when you're doing sponsorship posts. So it's just like a very unnecessary kind of
Yeah, and
article.
if you're new, and it's
Mhm.
like you're not very familiar with all the sort of details of it,
Mhm.
then yeah, you can end up in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that is also falls on the shoulders of the client and the brand as well, is to just make that really clear.
And I am a huge fan of truth in advertising and the clear disclosure. So that's yeah. Just like you, if you need to have those disclosures in place.
Yeah.
They randomly mention Cardi B for not disclosing paid social media ads. Okay. Like that's an issue. I'm saying okay, as in why is it like related to dietitians?
I guess making the point that you can get in trouble, like, and you can
Yeah.
get sued, or brands can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Trying to think if there was anything else really that stood out. The Academy said that like they have an ethical code. They have I mean, when we become dietitians, we have to sign the whole ethics.
And every year, you know, when we have to like turn in all our CEs, like that has to be part of it every time.
Mm-hmm. And here was that response to that 2013 report to the industry ties that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically, this part of the article talks about the close ties between the food industry and dietitians, which I kind of have an issue with that because I don't have any close ties to the food industry. Like that kind of puts a broad sweep over all dietitians.
Right. Again,
I'm not opposed to working with a brand or anything, but I don't. So currently, probably because I have a small reach.
Dietitians don't. But a lot of dietitians don't. Like this is a very small sector of registered dietitians who do this kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah. They said 10.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, no, more of them do that, but this article is specifically looking at like the small 10 of them. Okay. And this is kind of like what we were talking about before. Just it's saying the same thing over and over again. Like you were saying, they sell so much more than soda, like water, other products that are nutrient dense and this is where, I've talked a lot about my channel, how like these, broad kind of statements that a lot of people who are trying to sell a supplement will say, like they'll talk about processed foods and like demonizing processed foods and not realizing or recognizing that so much of those processed foods have helped with health in like the country. So like biggest example that I use is cereals and how the fortification has allowed for things like spinal bifida to be reduced, for folic acid intake increase to help with the nourishment that mothers need when they're developing their babies, right? So like the demonization of processed foods is just
that's another thing that really gets under my skin. It's like, you know, fresh frozen foods, you know, especially if it's just fruits and vegetables, they have a long shelf life. They're usually on sale. So when we're talking about social determinants of health and meeting patients or clients where they're at, and their food budgets, you know, like there's nothing wrong with adding in canned carrots or frozen broccoli. You know, those foods are considered processed because I didn't freeze that broccoli. I didn't put those carrots in that can, you know, like, so technically they are processed. Anything that you didn't prepare from scratch is processed. And there's a lot of healthy foods that fall under that umbrella of processed foods, and even ultra processed foods, which tofu is considered an ultra processed food. So, you know, again, the nuances in all of this really, it paints a different picture.
And this part of the article, paid partnerships with food brands and industry groups. So dietitians who boast large social media followings said that the brands are eager to recruit them, flooding them with offers to pitch products. Among the most popular is Grasso, with a combined following of 2.4 million on TikTok and Instagram. In her videos, she dances and lip syncs to pop music while preparing recipes or dresses in different outfits, such as red for blood sugar, blue for insulin, to explain nutrition concepts. That is a really cute idea. I don't follow, like on TikTok, it's nothing related related to health. And so I haven't come across her videos, but she sounds like a really, like,
it's
I love that. Like,
entertaining. I mean, obviously she's got an appeal to a
right.
particular audience. And
Mm-hmm.
so, hey,
Using
more
expert.
power to her.
Yeah, exactly. More power to her. Expertise and comedy to provide evidence-based nutrition advice and debunk trending nutrition myths. And she's parlayed her popularity into endorsement deals with numerous food and dietary supplement companies. So that would include like Barilla pasta, Bush beans, Kind Snacks, Orgain collagen, Hint water, Treetop applesauce. So like I get like it's just giving information about like that. I don't see anything wrong with that as long as she's disclosing those partnerships.
Right.
And then it talks about another dietitian partners with companies that share her values and truths. And so she works in marginalized and food insecure neighborhoods, which is why I'm passionate about destigmatizing processed foods. That is so important. Because and there's another, so we've talked about kind of like with this article, how there's aspects of it that, in my opinion, are kind of misogynistic. Here's another aspect. It's very much not thinking anything about those food insecure and marginalized neighborhoods. So with that being said, what's the word that I want to use? Like privileged, like on like in its real meaning, like that's what this article is giving too.
Yeah, it's very elitist.
Yeah. That goes in with the fact that there's also talking about the MSG and issues around there are so many people who had issues with dietitians and other professionals talking about or partnering with I don't want to like pronounce that wrong. Ngimoto, yeah. So a big producer of MSG. I think their website is no MSG, like N.
Yeah, KNOW.
MSG. And there's a lot of issues regarding the fear around MSG and the history around it.
Which is just, the origins of the fear that came from using MSG are so racist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really like ridiculous that
Yeah.
we're still in that sort of mindset. But they've done a really good job. Like they've done really good job of like debunking all of those sort of fears of using MSG, which is a flavor enhancement.
Right. Yeah. The glutamine, which is an amino acid that tastes amazing.
I mean, it's naturally in foods and breast milk.
It's like, naturally found mushrooms, arachidonids, tomatoes, so many different things. And
Parmesan cheese.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's what makes it very like satisfying. Umami.
That umami. Yeah.
So there's talking about some other examples, like with Dave's Killer Bread. That's one of my favorite breads. It tastes so good. So yeah, just giving examples about how they're working with companies and their close ties. Like Mommy says, the sponsorships are close ties. And I mean, there are dietitians who consult specifically with food process or like with companies. That is very small. The amount of those dietitians in number are just compared to all of dietitians and everything.
Right. The bulk of registered dietitians work in clinical. I mean, that's just, it's always going to be like that.
Yeah. Okay. This dietitian said that she gets a barrage of offers to pitch greens products. Yeah. Dietary supplements are widely promoted with unproven claims and haven't been well studied. Yeah, like, okay. So that really didn't add anything to the story. So yeah. That was kind of an overview on this.
Yeah, it kind of, if you scroll down, you'll see that link. Not too far down, just kind of like, it's kind of in the middle where it has that link to that examination, or it'll say, maybe it's at the bottom where it says, that this piece was in collaboration. There it is.
There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right in
About
the
the
middle.
collaboration.
So if you click on that, then it'll take you to the examination. And they've done some pieces on like tobacco use. But then if you scroll down, you'll see this survey, because it'll have a link to that article. There it is. And then on the left side of the screen, that help us report on nutrition influencers on social media. That leads you to a survey, and it asks specifically about registered dietitian. It's not just nutrition information, it's actually asking about dietitians.
Interesting. Huh. So this is something I'm gonna kind of keep in mind on how they're doing and what they're doing, because yeah, if you're just coming on and miss us going through this, basically, long story short, comprehension is not one of the biggest skills for these authors.
And you can click on the author's, the lead author's name and see his background. And I just looked up books that he's written, and that's where I was like, oh, really? So you have no background in nutrition, yet you've written these books about diet and
see, I don't go writing books about, you said, what was his degree in psychology? I'm not writing books on psychology.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, man.
Stay in your lane,
Like, or if you want to move to the other lane, have the
educate yourself.
education,
write about it.
Right. Because if you move to a new lane, be educated about it. That's okay to move to a new lane, but yeah, be able to not spread misinformation. All right. So what? I don't really have time to get to
a lot.
The letter of the editor, basically from the academy, was kind of saying similar things, that it's not the majority, more than 90% of dietitians work in clinical healthcare, hospitals, medical centers, long-term facilities, private practice, public community health, school nutrition, and other operations. Very little of them are working with our influencer dietitians, and at that disclosure, that's basically the outcome. Yeah. Any last thoughts? We've kind of said a lot already.
I guess, last thoughts would be, dietitians are experts in food and nutrition, and our education does span, across those topics, as well as wellness and unfortunately, there have been articles like this. This isn't the first one. It won't be the last one that really targets people, registered dietitian, nutritionists, trying to discredit us because of whatever industry ties, et cetera. But I feel like, because of our expertise and our education and all the hours that we put in during just our internship, that's before we sit for the exam, that gives us this wide scope of experience in all these different fields that we can go in. And because dietitians can go into the field of, they can go into research, they can go into clinical work, they can go into restaurant management, they can go into critical care, or food, like school food service. So it's just so wide. And if you go to FNCE, which is the big nutrition conference, it's coming up, and you go to the expo floor, you're going to see everything from domes that cover a plate of food to, food commodities and shakes and bars, like snack bars. And you just see this wide range of stuff, because we can go in all these directions with the degree that we have, with the education that we have. But ultimately, we are a trustworthy profession. I feel
Right.
like so silly just having to say that. Um, and if you do have a question about
Mhm.
diets, food, wellness, even sports nutrition, there are
Mhm.
specialties, and dietitians do specialize in certain areas.
Mhm. I am
So
CSSD, so
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So like these are the people to turn to when you have those
Mhm.
questions about food. A dietitian that I used to work with a long time ago, she'd say, when you have a toothache, you go to a dentist. When you have, you cut yourself or whatever, you go to the doctor. And when you have questions about diet and nutrition, you go talk to a dietitian.
Right.
And
It's yeah.
so, yeah,
This
no matter
article.
what this article is trying to do to discredit what we do and discredit our education, like,
Mhm.
uh,
It
I,
lacks a lot of nuance.
oh, absolutely lacks a lot of nuance.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
You're
And I'm going to have
welcome.
to keep track of the authors and just kind of the ties and everything, and maybe start
Yeah,
looking at a
there's
deep dive on
definitely
that.
more to come with that.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
got to keep our eyes out.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to find you on, I know you're active on Instagram.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much across the board. It's Christy Wilson Nutrition. I have a Facebook page. I'm most active on Instagram. I have a website. I'm on Threads, which is attached to Instagram, and Twitter. I don't really use anymore, but that's a different handle. But I'm not really active on there anyway. So, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. All right.
All
Well,
right,
thanks for being on. And
thank
thank you
you.
all for watching. And I'll try to add those links later today or tomorrow. But all
All
right.
right, thanks a
Bye,
lot.
y'all.